Pre-construction has always been risky. We just forgot it was risky because the market made everything feel easy. For the last decade, prices went up faster than buildings got built. People made money on paper without ever actually closing. They didn't have to risk things like delays, rate hikes, the market softening. These were all easily ignored. And if you bought pre-construction condo in 2021 or 2022, your closing date is coming up in 2025 or 2026. And you might be feeling stuck. You might be feeling like you've made a mistake and that you're probably wondering, should you close? Should you assign it? Or should you just walk away? You're not the only one thinking this right now. In fact, this is one of the most common situations we come across when we're talking to our clients who bought something pre-construction in the last 5 years. This is something that I'm helping people navigate on the regular at the moment. So in this video, we're going to break it down a little bit further, what your real options are. We're going to use examples from discussions we've had with our clients here, some of the consequences that you actually need to consider so you can make the smartest decision possible. Now, of course, this is just an opinion video. You should absolutely talk to your lawyer about whatever your options are here. If you do want to go ahead and assign a condo, walk away from a condo, get legal advice to see what the actual consequences are, and monetary consequences is the biggest thing you want to really consider here. But let's be real. If you bought a condo pre-construction in early 2021 or 2022, you bought during the height of the market. Let's take an example right now. 2021, someone buys a one-bedroom pre-construction condo in Mississauga, about 520 square feet or so, for $640,000. That's about $1,230 a square foot, give or take, which is very typical at that time. They put down 20%, which would be about $128,000. Over a year or so, now they have in 2025 a unit that's potentially ready to close very soon, but there's a bunch of issues they actually have to start to consider here. The current resale value for similar units that they're looking at nearby might be like $590,000 today, maybe less if the building is oversupplied. And what we end up seeing a lot of the time is when buildings are just closing, we see an influx of these properties hit the market. And if you're one of the first to try to sell, you might not get a great price for your unit. Now, the bank's appraisal as well right now might come in lower, maybe a 570 or a 580, and you've paid 640 on paper. So now the lender is only willing to finance you 80% of that 580, not your original $640,000. That leaves the buyer having to come up with some additional cash, anywhere in this case between $48,000 and $60,000 in cash. And many people, especially first-time home buyers, they're not able to come up with this kind of cash. They don't just have it ready. That's why people are actually panicking right now if they bought pre-construction and their closing is coming up soon. So let's walk through each option in detail, and I'll tell you who each path maybe makes the most sense for. Obviously, my opinion. Now, the first option here would be you close the deal. This makes the most sense if you're planning to live long-term in the property. Here's why this makes the most sense. Even if you're down $30K or $50,000 on paper, that doesn't necessarily matter as much as you living in the property for the next 5 or 10 years. You're only losing when you actually are forced to sell the unit. If you sell today, you are in fact just giving up your loss. But if you can be in this property long term, you might want to just wait it out and see if the market does in fact get a little bit better, or at least you can do something like increase your payment frequency, put lump sums down, pay less interest on your property in the long term, and kind of mitigate the losses that you'll have here. Now, although you are going to close this deal, you might need to still make up this appraisal gap here. You need to qualify for a mortgage at a higher rate, absorb this new monthly payment that might be more than you might have thought it would have been in 2021 with those rates. For example, if you're borrowing a mortgage for $464,000 at 5.5% over 25 years, that's a payment of around $2,850 a month. That doesn't include condo fees, property tax. So the real question here is, can you comfortably handle the payment here, stay put long enough to hopefully recover some of that lost value? If yes, great. Closing often is the safest and the least dramatic option. But there is another unit. Option number 2 is you assign the unit. This is an appealing option in theory, and it's one that was very common over the last few years. And this is where people were making money without even having to own the property. They just had a piece of paper. They were able to kind of sell that contract, make some money on it, walk away from any potential headaches. But even though it's appealing, it comes with some serious limitations. Let's say you paid $640. You want to assign it for $630,000. Now, it doesn't sound all that unreasonable, but the reality is maybe you're paying a builder assignment fee, could be 1 to 3% of the purchase price. Your buyer may still need approval from the builder, so you might go through the point of finding a new buyer, but the builder could ultimately say no to that purchaser. And the market for assignments right now is extremely weak because you're able to get something resale that is potentially a lot cheaper than somebody buying something brand new. Buyers would rather walk into a finished unit with no surprises than buy a piece of paper right now. But here's the real kicker of the whole situation. If you do find a buyer, you're likely walking away with a loss regardless. There's no profit, and your deposit is at risk if the builder delays things or pushes things back. When does the assigning actually make sense right now? If you're out of time, if you don't qualify for the closing of this property, you're kind of strapped with what your options are. And of course, if the builder allows it, if you don't have the assignment fee, it might be a little bit more beneficial, a little bit of a smaller loss that you have to stomach at the end of the day. Don't assume assigning is easy. Many agents won't actually take on the assignment listings, and buyers are extremely skeptical. For example, right now we have an assignment listing in Welland, on the Welland Canal, beautiful condo. It's actually a sold out building, but trying to assign something right now, there's definitely limitations. Even though the builder does allow assignments in this case, and it's free for the first assignment, what happens here is it's not allowed to go on MLS. It has to only be advertised via social media, email networking, things of that nature. So it has its own restrictions in that sense. Last option we had here, you can just walk away. This is the riskiest. It has lots of legal implications, and this is where you really need to talk to your lawyer about how this situation can play out for you in the pro and in the con situation here. But it's the nuclear option. You forfeit your deposit. The builder can still sue you for damages even after you walk away from your deposit. Your credit might take a massive hit, especially if there's legal proceedings to follow, and you may be unable to buy another home for years. Not just ever, it might be years that this actually takes place. And that said, some buyers, they're actually doing this right now. We've seen other videos where buyers are walking away from their condos, and usually this is the investors. They've bought multiple units. They can't close on all of these, or they're taking a loss on, 4, 5, 6 units at a time. And if that's the case, they walk away. They are going to risk being sued by the developers. And the developers, they're not going to be able to sell these units for the same price that you paid for it in 2021 or 2022. So people who lost their jobs, they had a major life crisis, maybe change, and they literally can't close. This situation's a little different. Maybe you contact the builder, see if you can get a little bit of a grievance exception here. The builder may or may not care, but if you have a real reason as to why you can't afford to close on this unit, and it's not just you don't want to lose on it financially, maybe the builder might have just a little bit more sympathy for you. And if you're thinking about walking away, you need a lawyer. There's no question. We can set you up with a lawyer if you need, but you need a lawyer, a real estate lawyer who has experience in this type of situation. But you need to know this. The damage of walking away is often a lot worse long-term than finding a way to actually close the unit, whether that's getting a cosigner, finding the money from another means through your bank, through another option. Maybe it's a private lending for that remainder of the mortgage. But it's definitely the last option and the one that I would not personally recommend. Now, we do have the question come up quite often is, can you actually negotiate here with the developer? And the short answer is it's extremely rare. It's possible. You might be able to have a conversation with a developer, see if you can't negotiate a little bit of a grievance here, but developers aren't required to lower your price at all. In some cases, especially when they have multiple buyers backing out, they may not really be interested whatsoever. They may offer you something like maybe an extended closing, a reduction to your upgrade costs if there's some upgrades that you have originally selected. They might give you permission to assign, maybe reduce that fee or get rid of that fee altogether. But even partial price adjustments, they're extremely rare or unheard of for most cases here. Now the key is, don't ask, you don't get. So you might as well have a lawyer reach out early in the process if you think you're not going to be able to close on it. If the builder knows you're trying to cooperate here and maybe close the deal and not just disappear right out the back door here, you're more likely to meet them with some kind of consolation, but it is definitely extremely likely. Now, let's zoom out for a moment here. Pre-construction, it has always been risky. Just because the market over the last 10 years made it seem extremely easy, prices have gone up. People have sold paperwork without having to close on buildings. You haven't thought about all these risks. But now, those risks are showing up at the absolute worst time for buyers who weren't prepared for this. And honestly, that's not really your fault. The systems don't explain it very well. The brochure doesn't tell you the downside here of everything, and most people just assume that real estate always goes up because that is what you hear. If you buy real estate, it will be worth more down the road. So what happens next here? Short-term condo values, especially in the GTA and new builds, they may stay flat. They may even decline here for a little bit of time, for sure. And assignment sales, they're going to remain very slow. Mortgage qualifying, it's very strict right now. You're going to have to consider you are at higher rates than you were in 2021. So when you're going to close, your payments are going to be more than you expected, but you also have to qualify with the stress test, which is 2% above the posted rate. But long-term, GTA is still one of the most in-demand regions in the country. The jobs are central to the GTA. So if you have a property in this area, it's definitely a benefit to you long-term. Immigration, land constraints, urban demand, they're going to support the market again at some point. When will that be? We're not too sure. But if you're thinking long-term, you can actually afford to close. You might be better holding on to this for the long term. But if you're not sure, that's when you need to actually start looking at real numbers before you start to panic about anything. Now, the bottom line is here, if you bought pre-con, your closing is around the corner, you're not necessarily doomed here, but you need to have a plan of action, and you can't just ghost the developer and walk away. It's not going to end well for you. You can always text me at the number on screen here if you have any questions, or if you want us to connect you with a lawyer that we trust to handle our clients. We can also do that as well. If you have a property you're trying to sell on the assignment side of things, you can definitely reach out. We can see if we can't find somebody who can connect with you as well. My info is in the description box down below. Hopefully, you have that ability to move your property before it actually closes if you are in the position that you can't financially close on it. Thank you so much for watching this one. I want to know in the comment section down below, which one of these three options would you choose if you were about to close in the next 12 to 24 months on your pre-construction project? Would you walk away? Would you assign it? Or would you just close and figure it out long term? Thanks so much. I'll see you in the next one. Bye for now.